Inside the high-security corridors of Yamaha's Iwata headquarters, a silent revolution has just reached its breaking point, and the target is the American asphalt. The 2026 MotoGP season didn't just begin with a race. It began with an admission of defeat that turned into a gamble of unprecedented proportions. For decades, Yamaha stood as the final guardian of the inline-4 engine philosophy, a configuration that prioritized corner speed over raw atmospheric power. But as the European V4 machines from Ducati and KTM began to redefine the laws of physics on the straights, Yamaha found itself in a technical cul-de-sac. The solution was the Blue Shift protocol, a multi-million-dollar transition to a V4 power unit that many insiders believed was a decade overdue. However, a revolutionary machine requires a revolutionary hand to guide it. Enter Toprak Razgatlioglu. The Turkish sensation, mentored by the legendary Kenan Sofuoglu, arrived in the paddock not just as a rider, but as a symbol of defiance against the established MotoGP hierarchy. For years, critics argued that his aggressive, late-breaking superbike style would never translate to the rigid aerodynamic-heavy prototypes of the premier class. As the team touched down at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, the atmosphere was clinical. Reporters on the ground noted a distinct lack of the usual pre-race bravado. There was only the hum of generators and the intense, focused eyes of engineers staring at telemetry screens. This wasn't just another round of the World Championship. It was a public litmus test for Yamaha's survival. Could a man who spent his career on production tires master a V4 monster that was still, by all accounts, in its experimental infancy? The stakes were no longer about points. They were about the very reputation of Japanese engineering in an era dominated by European innovation. The telemetry spikes were unlike anything the Yamaha engineers had seen in 20 years, suggesting the bike was being ridden by someone who refused to acknowledge the limits of physics. As free practice 1 commenced under the hazy Texas sun, our technical correspondents noticed immediate deviations in the V4's behavior compared to the old M1. The sound alone was a visceral departure, a guttural mechanical roar that signaled a change in the bike's firing order and torque delivery. But early reports from the pit lane suggested that all was not well. Toprak Razgatlioglu appeared to be wrestling with a ghost in the machine. In the high-speed change of direction through COTA's famous S's, the bike looked nervous, with the front winglets struggling to provide the necessary downforce at 180 miles per hour. Technical analysts observed Toprak returning to the box repeatedly, his gestures to Chief Engineer Silvano Galbusera indicating a massive struggle with front-end chatter, a high-frequency vibration that can make a rider lose confidence in a heartbeat. Yet amidst this mechanical turmoil, a narrative of resilience began to emerge. Instead of backing down, Toprak and his crew began a radical geometry reset during the overnight session. While rival teams slept, the lights in the Pramac Yamaha garage remained blindingly bright. They were chasing a specific feeling, the front-end feel that Toprak uses to perform his signature vertical entries into corners. By the time Saturday's qualifying session arrived, the whispers in the media center had shifted from "will he fail" to "what did they find?" The Turkish rider hadn't just adapted to the V4, he had started to bend the machine to his will. The data showed he was beginning to find a rhythm that defied the traditional corner speed philosophy, opting instead for a stop-and-go violence that caught the entire paddock off guard. As the grid cleared for the main event, the silence in the Yamaha garage was deafening, broken only by the sound of a rider who knew he was about to prove the world wrong. The Circuit of the Americas is widely regarded by the medical and safety commissions as one of the most physically demanding tracks on the calendar. With 20 corners and a brutal uphill climb into Turn 1, it punishes the slightest lapse in concentration. Our reporters on the grid noted that Toprak Razgatlioglu's heart rate telemetry, usually a calm baseline, showed a man in combat mode. Starting from a competitive mid-pack position, he was surrounded by the Ducati Armada, 8 machines designed to swallow rivals whole on the back straight. When the lights flickered out, the V4 Yamaha lunged forward with a ferocity that silenced the skeptics. Toprak's trademark aggressive entry into the first corner was a masterclass in controlled chaos. He didn't just hold his line, he forced his way into the top group, utilizing a late braking technique that saw the rear wheel of his Yamaha hovering inches off the ground at nearly 100 miles per hour. This wasn't just racing, it was a psychological assault on the MotoGP establishment. Throughout the opening laps, the duel between Toprak and the championship leaders became the focal point of the global broadcast. Every time a rival tried to pull away using superior aerologic, Toprak would reel them back in underbraking, using his superbike-honed instincts to navigate the technical sections. The technical disputes of the previous week seemed to vanish in the heat of the Texas afternoon. However, as the race reached its midpoint, our thermal imaging cameras began to pick up an alarming trend. The heat signature coming off Toprak's front tire was reaching critical levels. suggesting that his revolutionary braking style was putting a staggering amount of energy into the Michelin rubber, energy that the tire might not be able to sustain. At 210 miles per hour, the smallest mechanical vibration isn't just a nuisance. It's a warning that the entire project is seconds away from a setback. As the race entered its final third, the narrative shifted from raw speed to mechanical management. Reports from the pit wall indicated that Yamaha's engine braking maps were being pushed to their absolute thermal limits. Toprak was seen adjusting his brake lever position mid-corner, a clear sign that brake fade was becoming a factor in the 100-degree Texas heat. For a rider whose entire strategy relies on the final 5% of braking pressure, this was a potential disaster. However, this is where the genius of the Yamaha V4 project truly surfaced. Our technical insiders revealed that the team had implemented a fail-safe cooling duct system specifically for the Austin round. While other bikes were visibly struggling with tire degradation and overheating electronics, Toprak's machine seemed to find a second wind. The internal conflict within the garage was palpable. Engineers were seen debating whether to signal Toprak to map 2 for safety or let him continue his pursuit of the podium. He chose the latter. The player versus team dynamic was settled not through words but through lap times that refused to drop. Toprak began to change his body geometry, leaning his torso further forward to counteract the front-end lift, a move that showcased his elite-level physical conditioning. The paddock was witnessing a historic fusion of Turkish grit and Japanese engineering. But just as the gap to the leaders shrank to under a second, a sudden puff of smoke from a rival's machine ahead created a hazardous situation that tested Toprak's reflexes to the limit. He didn't flinch. He navigated the debris with the precision of a surgeon, but the incident cost him valuable momentum, setting the stage for a finale that no one in the media center had predicted. The checkered flag didn't just end a race. It ignited a firestorm of speculation that would travel from the Texas grandstands all the way back to the boardrooms of Europe. When Toprak Razgatlioglu finally crossed the finish line, the result was a staggering achievement for a project that was less than 6 months old. In the post-race Parc Fermé, the Turkish rider was greeted not just by his team, but by a crowd of stunned observers who realized the hierarchy of MotoGP had been permanently disrupted. Our reporters captured the moment Toprak embraced his mentor Kenan Sofuoglu, a silent acknowledgement that the Turkish gamble had paid off. In the post-race interviews, Toprak was careful with his words, utilizing safe phrasing to describe the difficult setbacks they overcame during the weekend. He praised the Yamaha engineers for their disputed advantage in engine management, but he also made it clear that this was only the beginning. The psychological pressure of the MotoGP Premier class is known to break even the strongest riders, but Toprak appeared invigorated by the challenge. However, the true twist emerged during the technical inspection. Rumors began to circulate that Yamaha had utilized a unique seamless shift logic that rival teams were now questioning. While nothing was officially confirmed, the speculation served to heighten the tension as the championship headed toward its European leg. The result in Austin wasn't just a collection of points, it was a declaration of war. Yamaha had successfully transitioned to the V4 era, and in Toprak Razgatlioglu, they had found a pilot capable of taking that weapon to the very edge of human capability. As the sun set over the circuit of the Americas, the paddock knew that the narrative of the 2026 season had been rewritten. The question was no longer if Toprak could win, but how long it would take before he stood on the top step of the podium.